that they apply absolute identity relations, right, between the natures and Christ. It's sort of like very similar to the logical problem of the Trinity argument. Like if the Father is God, and the Son is God, they're distinct from each other. How are they not two gods, right? Well, because we apply relative identity, not absolute identity. So in the same sense, if the two natures of Christ are distinct, how are they not two natures, right? Because we don't count natures by identity, we count natures by division. Same sense in the Trinity, we don't count gods by identity, we count them by division. And so the two natures are going to be counted as one nature because they're undivided while still being distinct from each other. So that avoids Eutychianism, but because you still affirm a distinction. And that also avoids Dyophysitism because you enumerate one nature.
Mm-hmm. And so do you believe that enumeration actually causes a metaphysical truth?
Of course, because there's a union, right? So like with the Trinity, because of inseparability and, there is no division, you do have this one God, right?
Yeah, you have one God, but do you truly still have the existences of the three persons?
Of course, because we with the Trinity, we're still going to affirm a distinction.
So
right?
Would you say that God is one in three persons?
Sure.
Okay, so then why can't I say Christ is one person in two natures?
No. So we would say Christ is one nature because nature means a particular, right? In the way we use it, right? In the context of Christology or hypostases. So one nature with two sets of properties. And there's going to be a distinction between the two sets of properties.
Yes, I understand. And is that distinction between the two sets real?
If you take like the moderate realist view about properties, then yeah, it would be a real qualitative distinction.
Is that your view?
I'm agnostic on whether I view qualities. Yeah, sure, I can grant that. Yeah, I can. Yes.
So I'm not talking about the qualities themselves. I'm talking about the sets. So, like for example, if we have a set of qualities, right, that implies that there's some form of predicate of the set itself. What the name of that set? So if we have two sets, the two names of these sets, what would they be?
Two sets?
Yeah, the set of properties. What would the name of the first set of properties be?
Oh, like the divine set of properties? The human set of properties?
The divine nature?
Well, the divine nature would possess these set of properties, right? And the human nature would possess. But then we would say we enumerate natures by division and properties by distinction. Sort of like we enumerate gods by division and persons by distinction.
Yeah. So in terms of what I'm trying to get at is that the distinction between the two sets of properties, so you said you're agnostic on whether or not that distinction is real?
Well, because I don't really have a view about whether properties are abstract or concrete, but I can grant you, I'll grant you that it's real, right? Yes, we do take the moderate realist view about properties, so yeah, it would be like a real qualitative distinction.
Okay, so then prior to the human intellect, then there is a distinction in the two sets of properties.
Prior to the human intellect, so what do you mean? Is that going to be like an ontological statement about also priority before the union, the hypostatic union, or?
So if we were to make a hypothetical scenario when we're talking about distinctions, let's say that after the union, right, we can still say that there's two sets of properties, right? But if there was no
after the union, there's two sets of properties.
Yes, yeah. And so if there was no, because like you guys would obviously say that the distinctions in Theoria, correct?
That's between the natures and not between the properties.
Yes, between the natures.
Okay.
Right. And so, I guess with that being said, do you believe that the set of properties, is that a referent to a nature?
Sure. In the same sense that the persons are reference to the essence, but they're not going to be enumerated as three essences, right? Mm-hmm. So in the same sense, the two sets of properties are referring to the natures, but the natures are still not going to be enumerated as two natures.
Okay, yeah. So but here's the thing though, if the set of properties is a referent to the nature itself, and you believe that the two sets of properties are really distinct from each other, then that then necessitates that then therefore there's a real distinction between the two natures.
Not necessarily, because we would still apply relative identity and not absolute identity, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to remember that with absolute identity, you would be correct. If we would apply absolute identity, then you would have to logically necessarily enumerate two natures, right? But if we apply relative identity, that's not going to be required, because with relative identity, Leibniz's law is not going to be applied, right? Or if you have two things that don't share the same qualities, they're enumerated as two things as Leibniz's law would dictate. But with relative identity, it doesn't need to have that enumeration of two, even though there's a distinction. It's like the Aristotelian notion of numerical oneness or sameness without identity, relative identity.
You do realize that, like, in terms of counting, we do say that there's one sun, right?
Sure, of course.
Okay, so then if we were doing that same thing and then we were just declaring the metaphysical truth of there still being two natures that retain, but then saying that Christ is
you're
one
saying
with
like
that.
Also, you're saying like you can do like the same thing that we're doing, but instead of saying two sets of properties, two natures
The
and
reference
one.
would be the natures, yeah. So what's the issue with that?
I don't think that this works, by the way, if you try to do it in the Chalcedonian paradigm, because
Really?
because for you to be able to do that, you have to agree that there's a union of two particulars, right? That's where you get one particular from two particulars. But the issue then is, then you're going to have to say that there's one particular with two sets of properties, right? But if you're saying that there's a union of two universals, then that's going to be the issue. But if
The particular
you're
in our view would simply the particular that it's in our view, though, would simply just be the concrete existence or Christ himself
That's
as
correct.
hypostasis. But obviously,
Yeah.
of course, in our view, hypostasis is synonymous with a person in that way, because every time that you reference a person or a prosopon in some way, shape, or form, it necessitates a hypostasis. Otherwise, it has no metaphysical baggage. As well
But
as if you
would
talk
you-
about a hypostasis, there would
Sorry.
be some form of prosopon that would be implied by it as well. So that's why we say that they're synonymous with each other.
Sure, but if so, the reason why I'm saying that this wouldn't really work with the Chalcedonian paradigm, right, is because if you're saying that there's one particular from two particulars, you're defining a nature, right, as a particular, and so then it would result in mono or / Miaphysitism, right?
No.
You would have to enumerate one nature, even if you're applying relative identity. That's why this relative identity solution can only work with one nature. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so when I'm talking about like the natures themselves, like I'm assuming you obviously, so you don't affirm that a nature is a universal in a sense.
In the context of the Trinity, or in human, in the context of humanity, then yeah, it would be a universal. In the Trinity, of course, it's not like an abstract universal. It would be like a trope, where it's the divine essence isn't like this abstract universal, like the human essence, right? But but in the context of Christology, it is a hypostasis, yeah, a nature. Because remember, we have a saint called Saint Severus of Antioch, right?
Yep.
He argues that the union must be a union of two particulars or hypostases and not two universals to avoid universal incarnation, because then you would have to say all of the Trinity united with all of humanity. If you're saying there's a union of two universals, the divine universal with the human universal.
Well,
that's why it has to be a union of two particulars.
We avoid that though by saying that there's two different nature, like that there's a distinction between the natures. Because of the fact that there's a real distinction between the natures themselves, then the actual act of incarnation, the taking on of the human nature, does not in any way, shape, or form fuse with the universal divine nature. So that wouldn't be an issue, because there's a real distinction between them.
Oh, sorry. Sorry for interrupting you, sir. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're fine. I think you might just have a little bit of a delay on your microphone or something. I thought you were done talking.
Hey,
Sure,
Adam. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Adam. Go ahead. My bad.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if you're saying you avoid that there's a union with the human universal, then what's united is a human particular, right? But then you're defining a nature as a particular. You're agreeing with us that a nature means a particular. But then you can see the issue, right? If you're going to be enumerating two natures, that's going to be two particulars after the union, where we would say there's one particular after the union, right?
Why would it have to be an abstract universal or compendium?
Abdul.
Hold on.
I'm not trying to be mean.
Pope.
Oh, okay, that's my bad. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if Abdul wants to ask a question, it's fine. He's really good with Christology. So if he wants to just ask like a simple
I don't mean to be rude. I don't mean to be rude.
I appreciate it, Pope, but
Yeah, let Abdul cook. We were literally just talking about this last night.
yeah. So
so
you can ask your
Fanatic,
question, and then I want to kind of like enter a thing after that.
Yeah, Fanatic, my question is, why does it have to be an abstract universal or compendium of hypostases or particular, because you would agree in St. Basil contra Eunomius when he speaks about the common nature viewed in Peter, Paul, and James, that is what they share in the same, but then this nature has distinctive features. So why can't the Logos assume a common nature and be particularized in his hypostases? Like, why do I have to hold to Severus's metaphysical baggage? I'm confused.
Oh, by the way, the compendium of hypostasis definition for a universal wasn't from only Severus. He actually got it from Cyril, and actually, I think one of the Cappadocians, I think it was the Nicene, right? Gregory of Nyssa, also defined it as a set of particulars. But it does make sense, like a human species. What's a human species? It's a set of human particulars, human beings, right? Like a group of human beings, right?
Sorry. I'm not denying that the humanity could be viewed, like humanity could be viewed in three different senses, as in the general, as in like an abstract universal, as in the compendium, as in all of the hypostases, or viewed in the subsistence, just like Basil argues and Nyssa argues in Not Three Gods and in Ad Greco. So I'm failing to see why it has to only be these two senses and not the third sense that Damascene talks about, that the Logos assume a common nature viewed in his subsistence with particular properties particularized in his hypostasis. That's why I'm failing to see why it only has to be these two.
So you want to say like it's the common nature in a subsistence,
viewed in a
right?
subsistence, yeah, viewed in a subsistence, yeah. Because
Sure.
like if I look at you, I view the common nature viewed in Adam, but it's not the common nature viewed in Adam is not Adam until I add these distinctive marks, or we could say accidents, that is proper to you only.
Yeah. But I mean, but then if there are accidents, right? Then you have. Then you would have a subsistence, right? You would have an individualized concrete reality, right?
No, because this. I'm sorry. No, because
So the issue becomes, okay, you want to say like the common nature in a subsistence. Does this common nature subsist? Does it concretize? Does it become like a concrete existence? And I think
it's concretized. It's concretized and particularized in the hypostases of the Logos. So it's not a different hypostasis, because we obviously understand that natures do not proceed. Well, for us, we would say that the human nature did not subsist per se. We're just speaking like how the union come to happen, and it always subsists in the hypostasis of the Logos when he assumed it. So it's not its own different individual. That's why I'm feeling.
I think it's going to be like the inconsistency, right? Because if you're saying it is a particular within the divine hypostases. Right?
No, I'm not saying that.
You're saying it particularizes within the divine hypostasis.
It gets particularized in the hypostasis. It's not its own particular. So
it's not its own, but it's a particular, but it's not its own particular, right?
No. The single particular is the Logos himself. If we're just saying like the Logos are particular, obviously analogically, but the nature itself is particularized in the hypostasis of the Logos. So now the hypostasis, this is Damascene, quoting Damascene, one of the hypostases of divinity becomes one of the hypostases of humanity without a change. So the individual properties of the humanity is now the Logos individual property. So he is the one that is said to particularize this nature. He makes the nature subsist. The nature needs him to be actualized. It's not particularized before the union. That's what I'm getting.
Sure. But the humanity particularizes, and you want to say it's inseparable from the divine hypostasis. But it's still
in the divine hypostasis. It's not like they're side by side, like how you would say.
Yeah. But when you're saying it subsists, right? It means it has now become a particular, albeit non-separable from the divine hypostasis.
No, that's your Christology, brother. I'm saying particular. It subsists. I'm saying because it exists in the Logos. It needs the Logos to be actualized. The Logos is the only particular in the whole composition.
Sure. So you want to say it's a particular in the Logos, right?
No, brother, no, because if it's a particular in the Logos, that means it was already a particular before it subsists in the Logos. It never subsists by itself. It never was a particular by itself. It subsists in the Logos and is attached when the Logos takes on individuating properties to make him a different human being than from us.
Yeah, so if he's a different human, if he has this individualizing properties or accidental properties as humanity that makes him different from me and you, right? He has this human body that's like he has blue eyes, right? I have black eyes, so he has these individualizing properties that's different from you and I. Fail to see how his humanity is not like, even though it's inseparable from the divine hypostases, it's still not a particular in the divine hypostasis. I don't know why you want to avoid saying it's a particular in the divine hypostasis.
Because when you say it's a particular in the divine hypostasis, I'm taking you to say it's another individual in the divine hypostasis, because particular for you are individuals. I'm saying the only particular is the Logos himself, which is why there's only one hypostasis. There's only one self-sufficient hypostasis that's acting. There's only one active mover, which is the Logos. The human nature, the common, is now in the Logos, the hypostasis of the Logos attached with individual properties. The individual properties is not now on this common nature that's doing its own thing. It's now in the now attached to the hypostasis of the Logos. Just like Basil speaks about the common nature that's viewed in Peter, Paul, and James, but then these distinctive characters or marks that he speaks about is what differentiates them from them, and obviously the way they subsist, the mode of how they subsist.
That's actually one of the reasons why, like, I mean, like he just explained it, of course, but like that's why, because in your guys' view, of course, when we're talking about like a particular, you guys believe that is like the individual concrete existence that of a universal, right? And because of the fact that we believe in obviously the doctrine of hypostaton, that's not something that occurred within the human nature, within the human hypostasis. The human hypostasis was not like its own particular prior to the union by itself.
That's right.
It was assumed by the particular of the Logos himself.
But you would still believe that the humanity is a particular inseparable from the divine hypostasis, right, Bryce?
It depends how you're saying particular. Oh, you're talking to Bryce. I'm sorry.
What did you say? Sorry.
Or anyone, like, not, it's not only two.
It depends what you mean by particular. Because again, when you say particular, I mean, I spoke to you a lot. When you say particular, I'm assuming you're saying something that's already concrete of its own, by itself.
Not by itself. It doesn't have to be by itself, right?
Okay. Concrete in what sense then?
So, concrete meaning that it's like now an individualized concrete reality, not by itself. It can be also a part of, so sort of like the
that's what you meant by concrete. Like, what did you mean when you say something's a concrete existence? Like, what does that mean?
But the thing, fanatic, and you know, if I say that it's already an individuated nature before it subsists in the Logos, then you're just trying to put me in the you're severing dilemma of your.
But I didn't.
No, brother, because this is just Severus's metaphysical baggage, which I'm rejecting. Which the nature has to be. The nature has to be particularized prior to the union, so it has to be a composite nature. I'm rejecting that.
No. I mean, Severus didn't believe that prior to the union in reality it was only in theory.
No. I know this is all in theory. No. I know. Yeah, obviously, there's never, even for you, there's never a time that the union was not together in reality. I know that.
Yeah, but I want to like concentrate on after the union, right? So after the union, when the humanity subsists, right, it's now individualized, right? So you have this individualized, particularized thing, right? Human thing that's inseparable from the divine hypostasis, right?
No, because the nature itself is not what being particularized. If you're saying that it's becoming an individual, that's why I keep hesitating from that, because I know what you guys mean by individualized, because it's now its own particular. Even though you're saying it's inseparable after the union, I'm saying the Logos particularize the nature that subsists in him. So if you're saying what I'm saying, sure, I have no problem saying that. That's what I've been saying.
Yeah, so if it's particularized, right, the problem then is you're defining a nature, right, as a particularized thing, right?
No. What? I'm defining nature as the common. That's why I count two commons after the union. I don't count
the human nature. But when we're talking about the union of the two natures, you have a union of a divine hypostasis and a particularized common nature that's been particularized within the divine hypostasis, right?
No, I'm taking what Gregory Nazianzus says is two commons that come together.
But how can two universals then?
Again, not abstract universals, common natures that's viewed in the subsistence. It's not. Book 2, paragraph 4 and 28, when he says the common that's viewed in Peter, Paul, and James. You're telling me the common that's viewed in them are all concrete? The common is an individual itself, or is an individual the common when it's attached to distinctive marks or characteristics? What are we talking about right now?
Yeah, so the moderate realist view of properties would say properties are inseparable from particulars, so that you would have concrete properties that are inseparable from concrete particulars.
What do you
Goes
mean
against
property?
the substrate. Oh,
What do you mean
concrete,
property?
just concrete. So
Are you saying a common is just a collection of properties?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, because you inferred, right, when I was talking about universals, that from my system, it's something abstract, right? But
Or a
you're saying
compendium.
that you differ from my system by
No,
saying
no,
that
no, 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 no,
universals
no,
are
no.
not
I'm not saying
abstract.
that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I could talk about the common nature viewed abstractly, as in like a unity. I could talk about the
Okay.
common nature viewed as an all compendium of the hypostases. Then this is the third thing that you guys, I don't know, well, I'm assuming you guys reject from just this, from reading Severus and the whole Severan dilemma, which we accept, which Damascene defines as the common nature viewed in a subsistent, which is not the subsistent itself. It's just what it links us together. That's why
Yeah,
this is literally what Basil says in Contrary to Nomius book 2.
Yeah, so when you're talking about, so there are two ways I'm understanding this, right? Because I've had this conversation with people before. So either you're saying, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? When you're saying it's the common nature, right, that's found in a particular, right? Are you saying that this particular is what grounds the common nature? So that, like if I was a human being, right, that, unites with the lion nature, that me as a human being would be a member of the lion species and ground the lion properties.
Can you get Agen up here, please?
Yeah, you can get Agen. Yeah, that's one way. That's why I don't really understand that. The second thing is if you're taking this other sense, right, that no, there is like a human subsistence that grounds these human properties. Then you're defining a nature as a subsistence. Then you would have two subsistences after the union. But you can have that conversation, with Agen. What's
up, guys? How you guys doing?
God bless.
Doing good. It's the first time that the real Agen has joined my panel, because for the past 3 weeks, fake Agens have kept coming up here. So,
Dude, they've been going up on everybody's streams and getting blocked and banned. It's been crazy. I do not condone it.
oh, good. That's good.
Adam,
So,
I'm sorry.
just to
I'm sorry.
help you guys out. I know what Abdul is saying. Can I explain it to Fanatic Copt? And then explain what Fanatic Copt is saying?
Yeah, please go
If
ahead.
you don't mind, your mic is a little. I don't know if there's
You try
something.
to fix your mic, please.
Yeah, it's something that happens whenever I go on my phone. That's why typically, whenever I do any discussion, it's on computer. But do you guys think there's a way for me to join on my computer, or it won't let me?
Yeah, you should be able to join TikTok lives from a.
You
I
can
don't
try.
think you can do that.
Really? Yeah.
You have TikTok on you have TikTok on your computer?
Hey, Bryce.
No.
Hey,
No.
Bryce.
So what?
I'm about to be on the bus, so I might be muted for a while. If I'm loud,
you're
my
good.
background's loud, let me know.
Yeah, you're good.
I'll just say this real quick to kind of like direct the conversation you guys are having. Can you guys hear me at least clearly,
Yeah.
somewhat?
Yeah.
And Damascene says in De Fide Book 3 that it's not just any universal, but it's the universal viewed in atomo, in the individual. And even Damascene addresses that if it was just a universal on its own, all the hypostases would be assumed. So that would be the compendium model that Severus has. So Damascene's solution is assuming a universal with accidents and having it viewed in the subsistence, the hypostases. So this is what's known for Damascene as anhypostaton in the Greek, having two natures that are anhypostatic. He says they're constitutive parts in De Duaves. He basically is trying to argue there is no human hypostases. Rather, the human essence has the divine hypostases as its hypostases. Would that be a good characterization, Abdul?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Agen. If you could hear me, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah.
All my $100,
So-
Bryce.
So what I typically... Can you guys hear me, by the way, or did everyone go on mute? I don't know if I'm lagging.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So what I typically raise, because the Fanatic Cop loves to use the Severan dilemma. There's a little outshoot after the Severan dilemma, which is it's meant to address this question. Because this is something that you find early on in John the Grammarian, and then the two later Leontius of Jerusalem, Leontius of Byzantium. So the Severan dilemma doesn't end there. There's an argument I've been running the past couple weeks, months now, maybe years now. Maybe the past year I basically started using it. But it's pretty much, once you have the human essence and hypostatized in the divine person, you now have to predicate all the human properties to the divine hypostases. And Damascene knew this. So a question I typically ask Eastern Orthodox, is this predication an extrinsic predication? So something like Augustine would have taught, where you have the human nature relates its properties to the divine person by extrinsic relation? Or would you say that it's an intrinsic way of predication, that the divine person intrinsically has these human properties? What do you guys say?
You want to say something, Duel, or me?
Yeah, I barely could hear you. Are you here? I'm sorry. Bring catechism up if you can. But are you saying that extrinsic would mean that the human nature doesn't subsist in the logos?
Yes.
Yeah, no. It'd be Damascene will obviously, and obviously in Hypostaton it would be subsistent in the logos. So yeah, intrinsic.
Exactly. So that's the correct answer for Damascene and Maximus, and even arguably the canons of Canon 4 of Constantinople II, and then the Synodicon of the Seventh Council. It would hold an intrinsic view. With this in mind, once you affirm this, because that's literally what en hypostasis means. It means in the hypostasis. Once you affirm that, are you not thereby saying that God the Word gained intrinsic properties he didn't have before?
If you're talking about the logos incarnate, sure, but if you're talking about the logos in himself, no.
But remember, you just made a distinction. This is something you'll also find in the modern Parisian school, where they'll make a distinction between the divine person and his formal identity, and then the divine person who is grammatically possessing two natures. That is completely foreign. It doesn't exist in Maximus and Damascene. You have to have the same self-divine person, the pre-existent divine person having these properties. So you can't just distinguish divine only from divine human, because for Damascene, he says that the hypostasis was formerly sinful and became composite.
Yeah, so but Maximus, I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because it pertains to the personhood. So the personhood is the constitutive. So the divinity is the constitutive of the personhood. Therefore, it's not intrinsic change. If that's the direction of your argument.
You take person incorrect, because Maximus takes person as hypostasis. He says that the teacher makes a distinction between essence and hypostasis. Essence, according to which the God remained simple. Hypostasis, according to which he became composite. So you can't say you can't.
And according to letter 13, he says that the person became economically composite.
One sec. You can't affirm an
it's
ad hoc
economic
reading.
Composition.
You can't affirm an ad hoc reading where the divine person is identified.
No, it's the letter of St. Maximus. Letter 13.
And economic composition is enough for Maximus to say he's no longer in composite according to hypostasis.
Yeah, according to economia.
You want me to get you that quote where it's no longer in composite? Because your argument is
so there's no intrinsic change.
Okay. Agen, your Wi-Fi is bad, so you're probably over speaking people. But literally, in the quote you're quoting from Maximus, letter 12, he literally says he became composite economically. He literally says he became economically composite. Like I'm failing to see your point right here.
Economic composition is still ontological. That's why he says he's no longer in composite according to
but that doesn't pertain to his constitutive.
Okay, wait. So when Gregory Nazianzus says the logos who were formerly uncomposite, would you say that he changed too? I'm confused.
Hold on. Let Agen speak, and then.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Agen. I don't know if your stuff is. I think you're kind of lagged, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So let Agen speak, and then Kata will respond.
I'll explain that one more time, Kata. What you're trying to argue is that the person has an identity qua the divine essence, and he has his own identity grammatically or materially. That doesn't exist until the developments of the Parisian school. Maximus actually negates simplicity in the hypostases and only affirms simplicity in the essence. Right now, you're making essence and hypostases the same.
He doesn't.
But he explicitly says that he remained what he was in essence and became what he was not in hypostases. So you're making the two conflated.
Because what he says is that the constitutive of his personhood remains the essence solely. The divine essence is the sole constitutive of the personhood. Likewise with humans, like St. Gregory the theologian says, the soul is the sole constitutive of your personhood. Nevertheless, your body, for its motion and repose, inheres in the soul. So my ability to lift weights inheres in my body, but that is not able to be actualized without my soul. And therefore, my soul communicates or becomes composite because of my body. But that doesn't mean that the constitutive of my personhood changes because of my body. in hearing.
Nazianzus doesn't
also.
affirm. Nazianzus doesn't affirm any of that made-up metaphysics. He doesn't believe the composition of a man is that the soul assumes a body and hypostatic.
Out of the constitutive
That's
of the
completely
personhood.
foreign. Okay, and if you're arguing the
I'm
constitutive
just tracking the
property,
logic of the constitutive of the
let me
personhood.
talk. Let me talk.
I mean,
if you're
if you
drawing
don't
that the
talk
person.
nonsense, I'll let
Wait,
you
hold
talk.
on, hold on. Agen. No, we're gonna let you, brother, we're gonna let you. We'll just come on.
I didn't come up here to talk to two people.
Brother, I know, I'm not cutting you off. I'm just saying you guys are talking. Again, you guys are talking over each other. Can y'all just talk one at a time so we can all understand?
That's why I was gonna say. That's why I was gonna say.
Calm down. Ain't nobody trying to.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it like this. Okay, so Agen, when you're talking, Kata will not interrupt until you're done speaking, and that also goes likewise. Cool. Let's just do it that way. All right, Agen, go ahead.
Let me speak. What you're doing, Kata, I'm going to tell you one last time. That's completely foreign in thought from Maximus. The essence is not what makes the word in Maximus. He specifically says, and I can get you the quote right now. He specifically says, he remained what he was according to essence, became what he was not according to hypostases. You're trying to argue that he has an identity qua hypostases in his essence, and then has some other really distinct way you can predicate things to his person. You're implying that there's a person viewed in the essence, as in his constitutive identity is the divine nature, and then you're arguing there's another view you can have of his person. That doesn't exist in Maximus. I'm going to tell you one more time, another quote. He says, the teacher makes a distinction between essence and hypostases. Essence, according to which he remains simple, and he specifically negates incomposition to the hypostases. So it's one thing to say he's composite in one sense and simple in another, but Maximus says he's not incomposite. He negates incomposition in the category of hypostases. So I challenge you, show me one citation in Maximus where he says the person remains simple. I challenge you. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, letter, as Abdul Masih just said, letter 13, because St. Maximus says that the hypostasis became economically composite. So pertaining his constitutive of his personhood, which is the soul divinity, he remains simple.
Agen, you're cutting him off, brother. You just argued about not being cut off.
Agen.
Brother, you just argued about not being cut off, and you're cutting him off.
You know that wasn't my question.
Let him finish, though. Brother, let him finish. Just let him finish.
After he's done speaking, after he's done speaking, then just call him out.
Don't answer my question.
Bro, this is you're being unfruitful. Just let him finish. I'll let you talk.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. So Abdul Masih just read the quote, and according to the logic of that quote, there is a certain category in which Christ, the Word, became truly composite, and in another sphere in which he truly remained simple. In which he truly became composite is economically.
Bro,
it doesn't pertain to the
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, stop interrupting.
Nobody interrupted you.
This is kind of great.
Be quiet, all of you.
Bro, okay, bro, stop acting like that. Why are you, bro? You're on somebody, bro. What is wrong with you?
You guys can address my question.
Agen's the Pope
You're
now?
not letting anybody talk. What is wrong with you?
Hold on,
So
let me explain.
about getting cut off, and now you're cutting everybody.
This is getting embarrassing for all of you.
It's embarrassing because you're making an argument for you're literally addressing your argument.
Guys, everyone stop.
No. Because Agen could interpret Maximus for us. What does Maximus mean by economically composite?
Exactly.
What is no, Agen? You want to interpret our fathers for us? What does he mean by economically composite?
Okay, guys.
You're whining.
Bryce, go ahead and mute.
Everybody stop, bro. Everybody stop. Like, good Lord, man. Like, look, no, dude, Kata is not done with his own point. He's addressing it. You just don't like the way he's responding.
I asked for a direct citation. He didn't offer it. So just say, I don't know the answer.
No, your mic is great now. What did you do? I just muted you, and somehow now your mic is great. Please continue to do whatever you just did. So, anyway.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, it's literally perfect now. So, Kata. Okay, just continue with what you were going to say, and maybe he might answer your question if you let him talk.
Okay,
great.
I'll let him speak.
Great.
Go ahead.
So the tactic of pagan right here is basically positing the Severian dilemma. When that fails,
I didn't do that.
And apostaton is presented as a true answer to his dumb dichotomy. He goes to, is the change then extrinsic or intrinsic? And then we simply respond. In one sense, it can be spoken of to be intrinsic, in another it can be spoken of to be extrinsic. And it's intrinsic in the sense that the humanity terminates in the Word and has the Word as the sole subject of it. So like in the body-soul analogy, the body terminates in the soul for its movement. So basically, I cannot eat my food without my soul being the person of the body. It's very simple. But it doesn't mean that the constitutive of my personhood, namely my soul nature, quote unquote, analogously, changes. There's no intrinsic change in my personhood. So in one sense, it is intrinsic, in another, it is not. And by that quote of St. Maximus, letter 13, I'm behind my phone, so I can't pull the quote up. I'm paraphrasing, we can pull it up. Maybe like Bryce can find it. There is a sense in which the word became composite. And what sense is this? Economic, so according to the world. This does not mean that the simplicity of the divinity is infringed.
Are you done?
Follow.
Because the last time I refuted this, I gave you a specific challenge in order for you to prove your exegesis. I gave you a very specific challenge because what you're trying to argue, and I told you again, the source of this theology, it comes from the Parisian school. They wanted to solve this situation because you have this issue of whether he's a divine.
No, St. Maximus solved the situation.
Hey. Because when I did it, you started freaking out and calling me pagan. Stop. It's my turn.
You are pagan.
Stop. Let me continue. I gave you a very specific challenge in order for you to prove your exegesis, because the only thing you can show me is him saying economic composition. But economy is always in reference to the human nature. That doesn't ever go to show that it's in one sense and not another. Because I gave you a direct citation from Maximus where he negates incomposition and hypostases, and the only sense in which he allows simplicity is the divine essence. So with this in mind, I'm going to ask my question very clear and specific. Saying that it's a composite hypostasis economically is not going to help your butt in any way. Show me one place in Maximus, one place, not where he says he's composite, because I know that. That's what I'm trying to argue. But where he specifically says that the simplicity is in the category of hypostasis, because he only ever...
So you're making a word concept fallacy, because the change, so the composition is not in an absolute sense.
Kata, Habibi, let him finish.
He only ever says that the simplicity is in essence, and he says the composition is in hypostases. You're trying to argue in hypostases, there's a sense in which he's simple and a sense in which he's composite. I'm going to ask you specifically. Don't show me a quote where it says he's composite in hypostases. Show me a quote where it says that he's simple in hypostases. Take your time.
What?
That's what I thought. You don't have it on you.
No, because you're just
commenting on Christology.
This is complete nonsense, because I already explained in what sense it's composite.
Look at the meltdown. Look at the meltdown when I asked the very easy question.
No. This is nonsense.
One person, please. One person.
Bro, what? I want the exact quote. Bro, that's an argument from silence.
Everyone decides to talk.
Argument from silence. No, you're asking an argument from silence. Just because he doesn't say, he says simple in this sense. If he says he's economically composite, what does he mean by that, Agen? Since you could exegete
that the hypostasis becomes composite. That's what he means.
Because economically, Agen.
Economia always refers to the human nature.
It says hypostasis, not nature. What are you talking about?
Guys,
I can't hear everyone speak.
Guys, if we can't control this, bro, we're gonna do a showtime. Let's please, for the love of God, can we just try to do one at a time? Please.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, because you failed to get the quote, and I know you're gonna say it's an argument from silence, but this is the very thing in question I'm challenging. I'm telling you, because I gave you the historical source of this development of theology. It comes directly from the Parisian school when they tried to solve this dilemma, which Severus made against you after John the Grammarian posited it, and you've never answered it for 1,500 years. Show me one place in Maximus where he says... Okay, we can just sit here and wait until someone decides to say something smart.
The problem is...
I found the quote. Let me send it to you, Brian.
Okay, show me where he says he remains simple in hypostasis. I want to see it.
Cataclysm, if you're talking while you're off the app, we can't hear you.
He's sending a quote to Bryce.
Okay. Do you want me to read this, Abdul?
No, it's the quote that we both brought up, and he's saying That's referring to the nature. It says literally.
No, I didn't say that.